Are you listening to this alone right now? Maybe in your car on some empty highway, or in bed with your phone propped against the pillow. Wherever you are, I want you to imagine something for me. Imagine your best friend's voice. The person who knows your coffee order without asking, who covered your shift when your mother got sick, who makes you laugh at 3 in the morning when the roads are empty and the darkness feels endless. Now imagine hearing that voice come through your radio, asking for help, and knowing it isn't them. That's where I was 6 days ago, parked on the shoulder of Highway 163, watching the stars over Monument Valley, listening to my partner's voice beg me to respond. His exact inflection, his exact rhythm, that little catch he gets when he's worried. But Danny never says please on the radio. He says requesting assistance. He says need backup at my location. He doesn't plead. He doesn't beg. And his voice doesn't come through that clear, not on our old equipment, not from 40 miles away. I'm tribal police, Navajo Nation, Kayenta District. My name is Jesse Klitso, and for the past 2 months, Danny Tsosie has been my partner, my mentor, and the closest thing I have to family out here. 3 days ago, Danny disappeared, and the thing using his voice has been calling me ever since. If you want to understand what I'm facing, you need to understand how Danny and I became partners, and why losing him would break something in me I didn't know could still break. I need to go back before I can go forward. You need to understand who I was before Danny, before Kayenta, before any of this. 4 years with Albuquerque PD. Good cop, bad everything else. I made detective by 31. Closed cases that made my supervisors happy, and slowly hollowed out like a dead tree that hasn't fallen yet. My engagement ended 8 months before the transfer. She said I was present but never actually there. She wasn't wrong. Then my father died. We weren't close. He'd been drinking himself to death since I was 12, and I'd stopped trying to save him by the time I left for college. But standing at his grave on the res, watching my aunties cry for a man I'd trained myself not to love, something cracked open in me. My grandmother passed 3 years earlier. The traditional woman, who spoke more Navajo than English, never understood why I needed to leave. Her last words to me were simple: come home when you're ready. The land remembers you even when you forget it. I wasn't ready, but I was desperate, which sometimes looks the same. The Kayenta station sits where Highway 163 meets 160, a modest building dwarfed by the landscape surrounding it, red rock formations and endless sky. My first morning, Sergeant Clara Benali looked me over like she was deciding whether to trust me or transfer me immediately. "You're Jesse Klitso," she said, "Albuquerque detective. Grandmother was Mary Klitso from Denahatso. Good woman." "Yes, ma'am. Danny Tsosie will be your partner. Learn from him. He knows this district better than anyone alive." Danny appeared 5 minutes later, grinning like we were already friends. "You're Jesse, right? Clara told me you're from Albuquerque. Big city cop coming to the res to find himself. Something like that. Good. I'll show you where you are hiding. It's usually somewhere on Highway 163 around mile marker 47. I didn't laugh, but I wanted to, and that surprised me. 2 months of patrols together. Long shifts where the silence felt comfortable instead of heavy. Danny talked about his wife Maria, his 2-year-old daughter Lily, his grandmother's turquoise ring that he never removed. I talked less, but he didn't seem to mind. He'd tell stories about the land, about his family, about calls that didn't make the official reports. I thought he was joking about those. Danny made me feel like I'd never left. Like the 7 years I'd spent running from this place were just a long patrol that finally ended. He made me want to stay, which is why what happened next destroyed me. The Kayenta district covers over 2,000 square miles of high desert. Monument Valley sits to the north, those iconic sandstone formations rising from the earth like monuments to something older than memory. To the south and east, the land stretches toward Canyon de Chelly and the Chusca Mountains. Beautiful country, empty country, the kind of place where you could drive for an hour and never see another soul. The station itself was modest, tan building, maybe 3,000 square feet, fleet of white SUVs coated in red dust no matter how often we washed them. 6 officers total, including Sergeant Benali. We covered an area larger than some eastern states with a team smaller than a single city precinct. My first week, I noticed things I couldn't explain. The map on the bullpen wall had red pins marking certain locations. When I asked about them, Danny just shrugged. Special protocol areas. Clara can explain when she's ready. Sergeant Benali's office held the usual command decorations, commendations, department photos, flags. But there were other items too. A small bundle wrapped in red cloth on her bookshelf. An old photograph of a young officer I didn't recognize, faded with age. And a separate logbook, leather-bound, that she locked in her desk drawer whenever I entered. "What's that?" I asked once. "Calls that don't go in the regular system," she said. "Nothing more." Danny and I patrolled Highway 163 3 times that first week. The landscape swallowed everything: sound, distance, time. Radio static crackled constantly, signals bouncing wrong off the rock formations. Coyotes called it dusk, their songs echoing until you couldn't tell if they were a mile away or just beyond the next ridge. "You hear 3 at once from different directions, you let me know," Danny said once, casually commenting on the weather. "Why?" "Just protocol." He pointed out an abandoned structure near mile marker 31. Adobe walls crumbling, roof collapsed inward, windows like empty eye sockets. Old Yazzy's trading post, closed since '09. "We don't patrol there after dark." "Why not?" Danny's smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Some places aren't ours after sunset. The land has its own rules out here, Jesse. Albuquerque had gangs and drugs. We've got those too, but we've also got other things. Things that don't fit in police reports." I laughed. He didn't. Nights on the res felt different than anywhere I'd served. Darker somehow, despite the stars being brighter than any city sky. The silence had weight to it. And sometimes, during those long patrols, I'd catch Danny watching the desert like he was waiting for something to watch back. On my 3rd week, Sergeant Benali called me into her office. She closed the door, which she'd never done before, and gestured to the chair across from her desk. "It's time you learned the protocols," she said. "The real ones." That's when I realized Danny's casual stories weren't jokes at all. Sergeant Benali reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a laminated card. The edges were worn soft from handling, the plastic clouded from years of being passed between officers. She slid it across to me without ceremony. "Read it." 6 rules. Typed in both English and Navajo, the text faded but legible. Rule 1. Never patrol alone after sunset. Maintain radio contact every 15 minutes without exception. Rule 2. If your partner's voice sounds wrong, too clear, too calm, too familiar, do not respond until you have visual confirmation. Trust your instincts over your ears. Rule 3. Do not follow anyone who walks into the desert at night, even if they appear to need help, even if they call your name. Rule 4. If you hear your own voice on the radio, turn it off immediately. Do not respond. Drive directly to the station. Rule 5. 3 knocks on your vehicle require no response. Do not acknowledge. Drive away. Rule 6. If someone you know to be dead speaks to you, do not answer. They are not who they were. I looked up. Sergeant Benali's face was unreadable. These are superstitions, I said, not police procedures. They're both. She nodded toward the photograph on her wall, the young officer I'd noticed before. That was Michael Yazzie, my partner in 1998, 26 years old, 3 years on the force. He responded to a radio call that sounded exactly like me asking for backup near Tsosie Canyon. What happened? I was at the station when he answered, 40 miles away, not on my radio. Her voice stayed level, but something hard lived behind her eyes. They found his truck the next morning. The engine is still running. The door opened. Michael was gone. We never found him. The room felt smaller suddenly. The protocols exist because we've tested them, Benali continued. Tested them with blood. Officers who followed them lived. Officers who didn't. She gestured toward the photo. You don't have to believe Klitzo, but you have to follow them. If I'm wrong, you've lost nothing. If I'm right, you're alive. Danny knocked on the doorframe. Benali waved him in. Telling him about the rules? Danny asked, settling into the chair beside me. He's skeptical. I was too. Danny pulled out his phone, scrolled to a photo. Deep scratches gouged into white paint his patrol truck. November 2019. Highway 163. Around 11 p.m. Radio crackles and I hear myself. My own voice, perfect copy, asking for my current location. I remembered Rule 4. Turned off the radio. Drove straight here without stopping. And the scratches. Found them the next morning. I was 40 miles from anywhere. Nothing out there but rock and sand. Nothing that should have been able to reach my truck. He put the phone away. Whatever was out there, it wanted me to answer. Wanted me to confirm where I was. Benali handed me a business card. Simple, handwritten. A name and phone number. Hastian Bigay, medicine man from Denahatso. If you encounter something the protocols can't handle, you call him. Day or night. I pocketed the card, still not believing. Still certain there were rational explanations for everything they described. I told myself Danny's story was a radio glitch, an animal attracted by engine heat, anything rational. Then came the night of the wellness check and I started to believe. 2 weeks of quiet shifts, routine traffic stops, a domestic dispute in Kayenta proper, one drunk and disorderly outside the gas station. Normal police work. I'd almost convinced myself the protocols were just tradition, respected but unnecessary, like saluting a flag. Then we got the wellness check. Elderly man named Howard Begay, living alone in a trailer near the Utah border. His daughter in Flagstaff hadn't reached him in 5 days. Probably nothing, dispatch said. His phone died sometimes. But could we swing by? The drive took 40 minutes. Danny spent most of it talking about Lily, how she just started forming full sentences, how she called him Daddy-da, because one daddy wasn't enough. The sunset painted everything gold and crimson, and for a moment, I forgot we were heading towards something wrong. Then we arrived. The trailer sat alone against the desert, a mile from the nearest neighbor. Modest structure, maybe 30 years old, with a truck parked outside that hadn't moved in days. Dust coated the windshield thick as felt. The front door was open. "Mr. Begay?" Danny called out, hand resting on his holster. "Navajo Nation Police. Your daughter asked us to check on you." No answer. Just whined through the door frame, carrying a smell I recognized from Albuquerque. Rotting food. Something dead, maybe an animal, maybe not. We entered carefully. The kitchen told the story, dishes in the sink, food left out so long it had turned to mold, a carton of milk bloated with gas. The television was on, muted, casting blue flickers across the walls. No sign of struggle. No sign of Howard Begay. "I'll check around back," Danny said. "You finished here." He disappeared through the rear door. I moved through the small living space, checking closets, the single bedroom, the bathroom. Nothing. Just absence. Just a home that felt like it had been holding its breath for days. Then I heard them. Coyotes. 3 distinct howls, rising simultaneously from 3 different directions, north, east, south. The sound wasn't sequential like normal pack calls. It was synchronized, coordinated, and wrong in a way I felt in my spine before my brain caught up. 3 sounds from 3 directions. Rule 5. Do not acknowledge. I froze in the hallway, hand on my weapon, breath caught somewhere between my lungs and my throat. The howls faded. Silence returned, but heavier now, pregnant with something watching. Danny appeared in the back doorway. His face told me everything. "You heard it," he said. 3 directions. Same time. He nodded once. "We're done here. Move." We didn't run. Running felt like it would trigger something, but we walked fast, deliberate, back to our vehicle. The sun had dipped below the horizon while we were inside, and the sky was bleeding into purple darkness. I started the engine, pulled away from the trailer, gravel crunching under our tires. I glanced in my rearview mirror. Something stood in the doorway we just left. Too tall. 7 feet minimum, maybe more. Its proportions were wrong, arms hanging past where knees should be, shoulders too narrow for its height. A silhouette that looked almost human until you really saw it. And it was watching us leave with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. I blinked. Gone. "Jesse." Danny's voice was quiet, steady. "You saw it too." Not a question. That night I believed. Not fully. Not yet. But enough to check my locks twice and leave the bathroom light on. Danny texted me around midnight. "Told you it wasn't all folklore." 3 days later, Danny disappeared, and I started getting radio calls in his voice. It happened on a Tuesday. Danny was covering for Officer Nakai, who'd called in sick with something his wife caught from their kids. Routine shift swap. Happens all the time. But it meant Danny was patrolling alone. I was off duty, home in my rental trailer, but I kept the radio on. Habit from Albuquerque, you never really stop listening. Danny's check-ins came through every 15 minutes, steady as a heartbeat. Mile marker 12, Kayenta Junction, Highway 163 northbound. Then, at 10:47 p.m., dispatch, this is Unit 7. I'm checking out something at the old Yazzie trading post. Probably nothing. Back at 15. Old Yazzie's. The place we didn't patrol after dark. I sat up. Something cold settled in my stomach, the kind of instinct that kept me alive on Albuquerque streets. I waited for the next check-in. 15 minutes passed. Nothing. 20 minutes. Static. I grabbed my keys. By the time I reached the trading post, 2 other units had converged. Sergeant Benali was already there, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The scene carved itself into my memory with the permanence of a scar. Danny's truck sat 30 feet from the collapsed structure. The driver door opened, engine running, headlights illuminating nothing but dust and sagebrush. The radio inside crackled with dispatch trying to raise him, the sound lonely and small against the desert silence. No Danny. I searched the immediate area while Benali coordinated with dispatch. Footprints led from the truck toward the trading post. Danny's boots. I recognized the tread pattern, then simply stopped. Not scuffed out, not obscured. It just ended, like he'd been lifted straight up. Then I found the ring, 20 feet from the truck, catching my flashlight beam like a tiny star. Turquoise and silver, the setting handcrafted in the old style. Danny's grandmother's ring. He told me once that she gave it to him when he joined the force and said it would protect him as long as he wore it. Danny never took that ring off. Not for showers, not for sleep, not for anything. I stared at it lying in the dirt, and something inside me cracked. My radio crackled. Jesse! I nearly dropped the flashlight. Danny's voice. Exactly Danny's voice. The warmth, the slight rasp. The way he said my name like we'd known each other for years instead of months. Jesse, I need backup. I'm at mile marker 23, Highway 163. Something's wrong. Please hurry. Mile marker 23 was 40 miles south. 40 miles from where his truck sat empty, engine still warm. And Danny never said please on the radio. He said requesting assistance. He said need backup at my location. Professional language drilled in by training. I keyed my radio. Danny, confirm your badge number. Silence. The kind that has weight. Then Jesse, please. I'm hurt. I need you. The voice was perfect. Too perfect. Too clear for our equipment. Too calm for someone injured. Every instinct I developed, every hour of training, every lesson the protocols had tried to teach me, all of it screamed the same thing. This wasn't Danny. Sergeant Benali appeared on my shoulder. She'd heard it too. Her face was stone, but her eyes held something I'd never seen there before. Fear. Rule 2, she said quietly. If your partner's voice sounds wrong, do not respond until visual confirmation. Finished. I know. I didn't respond to the voice. Every fiber of my being wanted to, my partner, my friend, calling for help. But I remembered Michael Yazzie. I remembered Danny's truck, 40 miles from the voice claiming to be him. Instead, I drove to mile marker 23. I had to know. What I found there was nothing. Empty highway, empty desert. No Danny, no vehicle, no sign anyone had been there in days. And that's when I realized this thing had been waiting, patient, hungry. It had taken my partner, and now it was calling for me. Mile marker 23 gave me nothing. Empty asphalt stretching into darkness, not even tire tracks on the shoulder. I stood there for 20 minutes, listening to the wind, waiting for the radio to crackle again with Danny's voice. Didn't. Whatever had called me here had gotten what it wanted, my attention, my fear. I drove back to the trading post as dawn broke over the desert. Sergeant Benali met me there, along with a face I didn't recognize. An old man, maybe 75, climbing out of a truck that looked nearly as ancient as he did. He wore his gray hair long, tied back with red cord, and carried a bundle wrapped in cloth that he held like it contained something precious. "We're dangerous. Has Tion Begay," Benali said. "The medicine man I told you about." As Tion didn't shake my hand. He studied my face instead, dark eyes reading something I couldn't see. "Mary Klitzo's grandson," he said. "Not a question. She spoke of you, said you'd come home eventually. You knew my grandmother. Everyone knew your grandmother. She understood things most people pretend don't exist." He turned toward Danny's abandoned truck. "Like what took your partner?" As Tion walked the scene slowly, pausing at spots that seemed random to me. A patch of bare earth here, a cluster of sagebrush there. At each stop, he closed his eyes, breathing deep like he was tasting the air itself. When he reached Danny's truck, he crouched beside the open door and stayed motionless for nearly a minute. "This is old," he finally said. "Very old. We call it Yi Naldlushiai Du Hazoo, the voice that walks empty. In English, some call it the hollow voice. What does it want?" As Tion stood, his knees creaking with the effort. "Identity. It listens. It learns. Consumes. First the voice, then the memories, then the soul. Once it has everything, the person is gone, replaced, and the thing wearing their face walks among us." The words settled into me like stones dropping into still water. "Danny, is he dead?" "Not yet." Hastian's certainty offered a fragile hope. "The consumption takes time. Days. The hollow voice must learn everything about its victim before it can fully become them. Right now, it has your partner's voice. Soon it will have his memories, his mannerisms, eventually, his face." Sergeant Benali stepped forward. Her expression was controlled, but I saw her hands trembling slightly. 2011, Officer Raymond Begay. The same pattern disappeared near this trading post. Radio calls in his voice for 3 days. "We never found him. What happened?" The calls stopped on the 4th day. Just silence. She paused. Raymond had a wife, 2 kids. After the 3rd day, something came to their house wearing Raymond's face. Said all the right things. New details only Raymond would know. His wife almost let it in. Almost. His daughter, she was 6, started screaming. Said that wasn't her daddy. Said his eyes were wrong. Benali's voice stayed flat, professional, but something haunted lived behind her words. They slammed the door. The thing outside just stood there for an hour, smiling, before it walked into the desert and never came back. As Tion moved toward the trading post's collapsed structure. "There's more here, something underneath." We followed him through the debris, rotted wood, rusted metal, decades of decay. Behind what had once been a counter, Has Tion found a trapdoor, hidden beneath accumulated dirt? Old hinges, but recently oiled. The cellar below was small, maybe 10 feet square. A wooden chair sat in the center, ropes coiled beside it. The ropes showed signs of recent use, fibers frayed, knots still tight. And on the floor, scratched into the concrete with something sharp, were marks I didn't recognize. Symbols, warnings. It keeps them here, has Tion said quietly, while it feeds. Danny could still be down here? No, it moves its victims once the feeding begins. But this is where it starts, where it first tastes their voice. I stared at the empty chair, imagining Danny bound there, something ancient and hungry, learning how to become him. 3 days, I said. How do I find him? Hastian's eyes met mine. Tonight it will call you again. It will use everything it's learned. It will sound exactly like your partner, because it's becoming him. 3 days. 3 days before the hollow voice finished with Danny. 3 days to find him before my best friend became a mask for something ancient and hungry. That night, it tested me again. And this time, it almost won. Night 2. My trailer felt smaller than ever, walls pressing in like they knew what was coming. I checked every lock twice, closed every curtain, left the bathroom light on like a child afraid of the dark, because I was afraid, terrified in a way I hadn't been since I was 7 years old, hiding under my bed while my father raged through the house. The radio sat on my kitchen table. I should have turned it off, as Tion had warned me, Benali had warned me, but I couldn't. Some part of me still hoped Danny would call. The real Danny, alive and scared but fighting. At 11:23 p.m. The calls started. Jesse, you there, brother? Danny's voice, warm, familiar. That slight laugh underneath his words meant he was about to say something that would make me smile. I didn't respond. Sat frozen at the table, hands flat against the wood. Come on, Jesse. I know you're listening. Remember that time you tried to make coffee at the station and used salt instead of sugar? Benali's face, the voice laughed.
Danny's exact laujehash.
I thought she was gonna fire both of us. That had happened. Week 3, early morning. A stupid mistake I'd never told anyone about. But Danny had been there. The voice continued. Story after story. Private moments. Inside jokes. The way Danny described Lily's first steps. The nickname Maria had given him that he pretended to hate. Details no one could know unless they were Danny or had crawled inside his skull and taken inventory. My hand moved toward the radio. Jesse. The voice shifted. Softer now. Almost tender. I know you're scared. I know you've been scared since your dad died. Since he looked at you in that hospital bed and said, my blood froze. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you needed. The room tilted. Those words. Those exact words. My father, tubes running from his arms, skin yellow with liver failure, gripping my hand with fingers that had no strength left. His final apology for a lifetime of absence and anger. I never told anyone. Not my mother. Not my ex-fiancé. Not Danny. I'd carried those words like a stone in my chest for 2 years. Too heavy to share. Too precious to release. How did it know? My hand closed around the radio. Thumb on the transmit button. Every rule forgotten in the flood of grief and desperation. 3 knocks on my door. I stopped. The sound hung in the air, deliberate and patient. 3 knocks. Rule 5. Do not acknowledge. I turned toward the window. The silhouette stood on my small porch, visible through the gap in the curtains. Danny's height, Danny's posture, even the way he held his shoulders when something was bothering him. That slight hunch I'd learned to recognize. But I watched for 30 seconds, and I realized it wasn't breathing. His chest didn't move. No rise, no fall. No condensation forming on the glass from warm breath in cold air. Perfectly still, like a photograph given depth. Then it turned its head, and moonlight caught its eyes. They reflected, bright and flat like a cat's, like a coyote's. Danny's eyes don't do that. Jesse. The voice came from outside now, muffled by the door but unmistakably Danny's. Please let me in. I got away. I'm hurt. I need help. I didn't move. Jesse, please. Maria's waiting for me. Lily's waiting. I just need to use your phone. My radio's broken. Please. Maria's name. Lily's name. Weapons aimed at my heart. I'm so cold, Jesse. So cold out here. I can't feel my hands. The voice cracked, broke, crying now. Danny's voice, sobbing. Please, you're my partner. You're supposed to have my back. Please let me in. I sat in darkness, hands pressed over my ears, tears streaming down my face. The voice begged for hours. It cycled through every emotional register. Anger, fear, desperation, betrayal. It knew exactly how to hurt me, exactly which wounds to press. Dawn came slowly, gray light bleeding through the curtains. When I finally looked outside, the porch was empty, but scratches marked my door, deep gouges in the wood that hadn't been there before, and in the dirt, footprints. Human prints walking toward my trailer. Coyote prints walking away. I survived that night by remembering the rules. But I knew I couldn't just wait for dawn over and over while that thing consumed my partner piece by piece. I needed to find Danny, the real Danny, and Hastion told me there might be a way. Hastion's home sat 12 miles from the main road, a traditional hogan built by his grandfather's hands. The door faced east, welcoming the morning sun. Inside, the space smelled of cedar smoke and sage, decades of prayers soaked into the wooden walls. I arrived at dawn on day 3. Time was bleeding away. Sit, Hastion said, gesturing to a woven blanket near the central stove. You need to understand what you're facing before you can fight it. Danny's running out of time. Then listen faster. He lowered himself across from me, joints creaking, and unwrapped the bundle he'd carried at the trading post. Inside were items I partially recognized. Corn pollen in a leather pouch, eagle feathers bound with red cord, stones that seem to hold light differently than they should. The hollow voice keeps its victims alive during the consumption, Hastion explained. Their bodies, their consciousness, held in a kind of trance while the entity feeds. It needs them aware. Fear gives flavor. Memory gives substance. So Danny's still alive, for now, but the connection is parasitic. The longer it feeds, the less of Danny remains. By the 4th day, there won't be enough left to save. 4th day, tomorrow. Hastion began arranging items between us, his movements precise and ceremonial. If you find where Danny is being held, you can break the connection, sever the feeding, but the voice will fight you. It will use every weapon it has, Every voice, every memory, every fear. How do I protect myself? With this, he touched the corn pollen, with prayer, and with words older than the voice itself. The ceremony took 2 hours. As Tion sang in Navajo, phrases I half remembered from childhood, from my grandmother's voice in the kitchen, from dreams I tried to forget. He marked my forehead with pollen, pressed a small medicine bundle into my hands, and a leather pouch, surprisingly heavy, warm against my palm. When the voice speaks in a voice you know, say these words. He taught me a phrase in Navajo. I won't write it here, some things shouldn't be shared, but it translates roughly to your voice is borrowed. Return it. Will that stop it? No, but it will break its concentration. The voice can only maintain one mimicry at a time. Force it to drop the mask, and you'll see what it truly is. His dark eyes held mine. That's when you run. Or fight. The trading post cellar. That's where it keeps them. As Tion nodded. Prohibition-era smugglers used that cellar to hide whiskey. The voice uses it to hide what it takes. It's had that den for decades, maybe centuries. It knows every shadow. I stood, gripping the medicine bundle. Then I'll bring a flashlight. You're going alone. Not a question. I can't ask anyone else to risk this. As Tion rose slowly, steady despite his years. Danny would go for you. That's why I have to go for him. At the door, Tion stopped me with a hand on my shoulder. The voice knows you're coming. It's been reading you through Danny, learning your fears, your weaknesses. It will use everything against you. I thought about my father's last words, spoken by a monster's mouth. I know, then go. And Jessie, your grandmother, would be proud. I waited until 2 a.m., the deepest dark. If the hollow voice was strongest at night, then I'd face it at its strongest and take my partner back anyway. I turned off my radio, gripped the medicine bundle, and drove toward the abandoned trading post where nightmares were waiting to wear my best friend's face. The trading post waited like a wound in the desert. I killed my headlights 50 yards out, letting darkness swallow the truck. The building's silhouette rose against the stars, collapsed roof and hollow windows forming shapes that looked too much like a face. No sound, no wind. Even the insects had gone silent. The air felt thick, heavy, like walking through water that didn't want you there. I found the cellar entrance where Tion had shown us. Trapdoor behind the rotted counter, hinges freshly oiled. My flashlight beam disappeared into the darkness below, swallowed completely after 6 feet. The stairs looked solid enough. They also looked like a throat. I gripped the medicine bundle and descended. My radio crackled. I turned it off, checked twice. The dial sat firmly on 0, but Danny's voice spilled out anyway. Jessie, don't come down here. Please, turn around. Then my father's voice, layered beneath, I'm sorry, son. I'm so sorry. And underneath them both, my grandmother, speaking Navajo. Come home, little one. Come rest. All of them together, overlapping, harmonizing into something that wasn't any of them. I kept walking. The cellar opened into the space I'd seen before. Concrete floor, wooden chair in the center. But now the chair wasn't empty. Danny, bound at wrists and ankles, head slumped forward, skin pale as paper, but his chest moved. Shallow breaths, barely visible, but there, alive. Danny! I rushed forward. Something stepped between us. It didn't look like Danny anymore. It didn't look like anything human. Faces. Dozens of faces, swimming in and out of a form made of shadow. My father's face, disappointed and distant. My grandmother's face, pleading with eyes that held too much sorrow. Danny's face, mouth open in a silent scream. And others, faces I didn't recognize. Strangers, victims from decades, maybe centuries. All of them were worn like masks, discarded, used. The thing stood 7 feet tall, and its edges didn't stay fixed. It flickered like a candle flame, solid and smoke at the same time. Jesse Klitso. All the voices spoke together, a chorus of the consumed. You came for him. How beautiful. How foolish. Let him go. I could. The face shifted to my grandmother, her gentle eyes now holding something ancient and hungry. A trade. Your voice for his freedom. Your name for his life. Give yourself willingly, and Danny walks out of here. I looked at Danny, pale, breathing, trapped between life and consumption. You could join them, the voice continued, faces cycling faster now. Father, grandmother, Danny, strangers, you could rest. Let me have your voice, Jesse Klitso. Let me have your name. I'll release your friend. You have my word. The word of something that wore the dead like costumes. I pulled the medicine bundle from my jacket. You want my voice? I said. Come and take it. The hollow voice screamed, all its faces screaming together, and lunged. The hollow voice lunged, and I spoke the words Hastion had given me. The Navajo phrase tore from my throat, ancient syllables, sounds that felt older than language itself. Your voice is borrowed. Return it. The effect was immediate. The entity's form shuddered, faces flickering like a broken television signal. Its edges blurred, destabilized, and it let out a sound that wasn't quite a scream, more like 100 voices crying out in confusion at once. I didn't wait. I ran to Danny, fingers tearing at the ropes binding his wrists. The knots were old-fashioned, simple but tight. Behind me, the hollow voice recovered, its form coalescing again, faces swimming back into focus. You think words can stop me? My father's voice, cold with contempt. I've been taking voices since before your people had words. The struck. Not physically, the attack came from everywhere at once. Voices. My grandmother called me home. Danny screams for help. My ex-fiancé cried, asking why I'd left. Every voice I'd ever loved, weaponized into a wall of sound that drove me to my knees. The medicine bundle burned against my chest. I grabbed it, held it forward like a shield. Light pulsed from the worn leather, faint but steady, pushing back against the darkness. The voices dimmed, the pressure eased. Hastion's preparation was holding, barely. Jesse, Danny's voice, weak, real, coming from the chair behind me, not from the entity. I'm here. I kept working the ropes. Stay with me, Danny. What is that thing? Something that wanted your voice. I'm not getting it. The final knot came loose. Danny slumped forward, and I caught him, dragging him upright. He could barely stand. 3 days of consumption leaving him hollowed out and trembling. But his eyes were clear, present. The words, I said. Has Tion taught me words? Say them with me. I don't Just repeat what I say. Please." The hollow voice reformed between us and the stairs, blocking our escape. Its faces cycled faster now, desperate, angry. It knew what we were trying to do. "You can't." All the voices together. "You're mine. Both of you. I've tasted you both. Now, Danny." I spoke the counterphrase. Danny echoed it, syllables clumsy on his tongue but carrying power anyway. Power the entity had tried to steal and couldn't quite contain. Two voices, two targets it had fed on, speaking in unison against it. The hollow voice convulsed. Its form couldn't hold. Too many faces trying to surface at once. Too many stolen identities conflicting with each other. It stretched, thinned, and began to tear. "Jessie," my mother's voice, not dead, living. She lives in Phoenix. We talk every Sunday. "I'm so proud of you, son. I always knew you'd come home." The medicine bundle shook in my hands. That was my mother. Exactly my mother. The warmth, the cadence, the way she said "son," like it was the most important word in the world. I hesitated. Danny's hand closed on my arm. Weak grip, but present. Real. "That's not her, Jessie." His voice was steady despite everything. "Your mom tells you she's proud of your face. She wouldn't say it through a monster." He was right. My mother was direct, honest. She'd never let something speak for her. She'd drive 12 hours to say those words herself. I finished the counterphrase. Every syllable is deliberate. Every word is an act of refusal. The hollow voice screamed. Not words, not mimicry, just sound raw and ancient and terrible. All the voices it had ever stolen, crying out together as they were released. Decades of victims, centuries maybe, all of them finally let go. The form collapsed inward, darkness folding into itself until nothing remained but ash drifting to the concrete floor. Silence, real silence, the heavy, oppressive weight lifting from the air like a fever breaking. Danny sagged against me. "Is it gone?" I said. "It's gone." That we stood there, breathing, alive, as dawn began to filter through the cracks above. Danny spent a week in the hospital. The doctors called it severe dehydration and exhaustion, which was easier to write on forms than partially consumed by an ancient entity. He had gaps in his memory, 3 days reduced to fragments, nightmares he couldn't quite hold on to when he woke. But he was alive, and his voice was his own again. Sergeant Benali updated the protocols. A 7th rule now, documented in the leather-bound logbook. Detailed descriptions of the hollow voice, warning signs, countermeasures. Hastian's name is listed as primary contact for future encounters, because there would be future encounters. The voice is gone, Hastian told me the week after, but there are others. The darkness doesn't have just one face. I visited my grandmother's grave on a Sunday morning. Small headstone, traditional markings, overlooking the valley she'd loved. I hadn't been there since her funeral. Too much guilt, too much running. "You were right," I told her, "about all of it. I'm sorry it took me so long to listen." The wind carried the scent of sage. I chose to believe she heard me. Now Danny and I patrol together again. Same highways, same empty stretches of desert, same radio crackling with dispatch. But different. We don't talk about that night much. We don't need to. Some things you carry together. That's what partners are for. Last week, the radio crackled with a routine wellness check. We responded together, instinctive and easy. Unit 7, responding, Danny said, and I realized the rules keep us alive, but partnership keeps us human. If you're listening to this alone at night, remember, there are things that want your voice, your name, everything that makes you who you are. Don't give it to them. Follow the rules. Trust your instincts. And if you have someone you trust, hold on to them. That's the one rule that matters most. Stay safe out there.